The morning air was sharp and unforgiving, the kind that made every breath feel heavier than it should. At the quiet edge of the city, near a glass bus shelter where polished shoes usually passed without noticing anything beneath them, a single moment unfolded that would change several lives forever. An old wheelchair sat slightly crooked on the pavement, its metal frame scratched and worn, holding a man whose posture spoke of years of discipline and loss. At his feet lay a dog, loyal to the end, flinching as a shadow loomed over him. Power, arrogance, and cruelty had gathered in expensive suits, and they believed no one strong enough was watching. Before this story goes any further, if you believe that kindness still matters in a world that often forgets it, if you believe in second chances and standing up for the vulnerable, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with others, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach the hearts that need them most. The man in the wheelchair was named Thomas Hale. He was 71 years old, a retired combat veteran who had given the best years of his life to service. Decades earlier, he had been strong enough to carry others through smoke and fire, but a roadside blast overseas had taken his legs and much of the life he once knew. Medals lay forgotten in a drawer back home, polished once a year out of habit, not pride. What remained of his daily world was small and quiet. A modest apartment. A strict routine. And his dog, Ranger, a mixed-breed shepherd with graying fur and eyes that never stopped watching over him. That morning, Thomas had left early for a routine medical appointment. Public transport was cheaper, and he preferred it. Ranger walked beside the wheelchair, trained and gentle, never straying far. To Thomas, Ranger was not just a dog. He was balance when the world tilted, warmth during cold nights, and purpose when loneliness crept in. Ranger had learned to. The bus shelter stood between a corporate plaza and a newly built luxury complex. It was the kind of place where wealth passed through quickly, never settling long enough to see the cracks beneath its shine. That morning, 3 men in tailored suits approached, their voices loud, their laughter careless. They were late for something important, something they believed mattered more than anything else. When they noticed Thomas, the wheelchair, and the dog occupying space near the bench, irritation flickered across their faces. At first, it was just looks. Then muttered words. The kind of words people use when they assume the world belongs to them. Thomas felt it immediately. Years of survival had sharpened his awareness. He kept his gaze low, one hand resting on Ranger's head, silently hoping the moment would pass. But entitlement rarely walks away on its own. One of the men stepped too close. Another scoffed. A foot nudged Ranger aside, not hard at first, but enough to make the dog yelp and roll onto his side in surprise. The sound cut through Thomas like a blade. His heart raced, his breath grew shallow. He tried to pull Ranger closer, his hands trembling with helpless fury. The men laughed, emboldened by each other, by the absence of consequences they had grown used to. To them, Thomas was invisible. A broken man in a broken chair. To them, Ranger was nothing more than an inconvenience on the pavement. But cruelty has a way of echoing farther than expected. From down the sidewalk, beyond the shelter, a figure was moving fast. Boots struck concrete with purpose. A man in worn tactical clothing, broad-shouldered and powerful, ran toward the scene. His eyes were locked ahead, jaw clenched, breath controlled despite the speed. He had seen the kick. He had heard the yelp. And something deep inside him, something forged in places where survival depended on loyalty and honor, snapped awake. The man pulled over, tires hissing against wet pavement, and stepped out into the rain. Cold soaked through his clothes instantly, but he barely felt it. His focus narrowed, the world sharpening the way it always did before something irreversible happened. He moved fast, measured, reading distance and speed, calculating risk. The bikers were slowing now, sensing something behind them, irritation turning into confusion. The German shepherd lay still for a terrifying moment, chest barely rising. Water pooled around him, washing blood into thin pink streams that disappeared into the road. The man knelt beside him, hands gentle but efficient, checking breathing, checking for movement. The dog's eye flickered open, cloudy but aware, and locked onto the man's face. In that look was no fear, only a tired question, as if asking whether this pain finally meant something. The rope was thick, knotted tight, biting into fur and skin. The man worked at it with shaking fingers, anger threatening to break his control. He forced himself calm. Panic would not help. Strength would. Years of discipline anchored him as he loosened the knot, the fibers slick with rain and cruelty. When the rope finally came free, he pulled the dog closer, shielding him from passing spray, his own body becoming a barrier between the old shepherd and the world. The bikers turned fully now, engines rumbling low, posture aggressive. The man stood slowly, placing himself squarely between them and the dog. Rain streaked down his face, eyes steady, expression unreadable. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He simply existed in that space with the quiet authority of someone who had faced far worse than two men on motorcycles. The suited men stepped back. One muttered something about misunderstanding. Another glanced around, suddenly aware of the attention. Their power evaporated under the weight of witnesses and consequence. Authorities arrived shortly after, alerted by bystanders. Statements were taken. Footage was reviewed. What had started as casual cruelty ended in accountability. The men left not in triumph, but in shame, their status unable to shield them from what they had done. When the crowd dispersed and the noise faded, what remained was quiet gratitude. Aaron stayed until Thomas's bus arrived. He helped settle Ranger back at his side. He made sure Thomas was steady, safe. Thomas felt something he had not felt in years, not just relief, but recognition. Someone had seen him. Not as a burden. Not as an obstacle. But as a man who mattered. The bus pulled up. As Thomas rolled on, he looked back once more. Aaron stood there, hands at his sides, watching until the doors closed. Two men shaped by war, separated by years and circumstance, connected by a single act of humanity. Life did not magically change overnight. Thomas still had appointments. Still had quiet evenings. Still carried memories that never fully faded. But something inside him had shifted. The world felt slightly less hostile. Ranger slept more peacefully that night, curled closer than ever in news of the incident spread online. Not for the cruelty, but for the courage. People shared the video, not because it was sensational, but because it reminded them of something they feared was disappearing, that decency still existed, that strength could be gentle, that honor could show up when least expected. Aaron never sought attention. He returned to his life, his training, his long walks meant to calm a restless mind. But he carried the moment with him too. Proof that even outside the battlefield, there were still missions worth answering. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that standing up for others can. Hours passed. Dawn threatened the horizon with pale gray. Finally, the veterinarian emerged, eyes tired but hopeful. The German shepherd was alive. Injured, weak, but alive. Age had made recovery uncertain, but survival itself was a victory. The man sat down heavily, head in his hands, letting the relief wash through him like the rain earlier that night. Over the following days, the shepherd healed slowly. Scars remained, both visible and hidden, but something in his eyes changed. The emptiness faded, replaced by quiet watchfulness, then by a spark of recognition whenever the man entered the room. They spent long hours together, no words needed. Two survivors sharing silence, understanding that some bonds form not in comfort, but in crisis. The man learned the dogs passed through chip tags and faded records. Once a working dog. Once valued. Once loved. Abandoned when age made him inconvenient. The knowledge hardened something in the man's chest and softened something else. He made a decision without ceremony or announcement. When the time came, the German shepherd did not go to a shelter. He went home. Life did not become perfect. The dog walked stiffly. Some nights he whimpered in his sleep, reliving roads and ropes and rain. The man woke every time, hand finding fur automatically, grounding both of them. Healing was not a straight line, but it was real. Morning walks replaced fear with routine. Gentle hands replaced pain. Purpose returned, not as duty, but as companionship. Months later, on a clear evening, the shepherd lay on a porch, watching the world with tired but peaceful eyes. His body was old, but his heart was no longer broken. The man sat nearby, the weight of past battles eased by the simple presence of a dog who had endured more than most and still chose trust. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone who believes compassion still matters, and subscribe to support more stories like this. Your engagement helps keep these moments of humanity alive. And before this story ends, please leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from and what this rescue meant to you. Your words matter more than you know. Somewhere out there, on rain-soaked roads and in forgotten corners, there are still souls waiting for someone to stop, to see them, to choose courage over comfort. This night could have ended in silence and loss. Instead, it became a reminder that even in the darkest storms, one person stepping forward can turn suffering into survival, and cruelty into a second chance.